The spread of anthrax likely had its epicenter in the military town of Sverdlovsk 19, where those same secret studies were being conducted. During the Soviet era, this area had the status of a classified facility. Nearby, at a distance of about 200 meters, there was another military town, Sverdlovsk 32, which housed a motorized rifle unit. In 2008, Andrei Mironyuk, former deputy head of the Special Department of the KGB for the Ural Military District, shared his memories of those events. At the beginning of April, he began receiving alarming reports about the deaths of several soldiers and reserve officers in Sverdlovsk 32. For about 2 weeks, specialists worked through various hypotheses, including those related to meat consumption, dietary habits, as well as the possible influence of raw materials used at industrial enterprises. To clarify the situation, Mironyuk turned to the leadership of the neighboring 19th military town, on whose territory a secret laboratory was located.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support helps the channel grow and motivates me to create even more amazing videos for you.
He obtained a map of the wind directions that prevailed during those days and decided to verify this data by requesting similar information from Koltsovo Airport. The comparison revealed significant discrepancies in the data, which aroused even more suspicion. Operational teams were formed, which began to meticulously collect testimonies from the relatives of the deceased, recording the exact time and location of where the victims had been. On the map, they marked exactly where these individuals had been immediately before their deaths, and it turned out that around 7 or 8 in the morning, all of them had entered the area affected by the wind blowing from the direction of the 19th settlement. According to Mironyuk, the cause of the emergency was official negligence in the military laboratory. One of the employees, when starting work, failed to activate the protective systems. This led to a critical increase in pressure in the ventilation system, which most likely triggered the leak. As a result of the accident that occurred in the military laboratory, one of the filters could not withstand the load and burst. As a result, deadly anthrax spores escaped and spread across the surrounding area. It was in these areas that people later began to die. Among the victims were those who hurried to meetings, work, or school in the morning, were outside, or simply stepped out onto their balconies, completely unaware of what was happening. Experts still debate whether there was some kind of explosion or a failure in the safety system at that time. However, within a certain circle of people, there was a firm belief that the source of the outbreak was the military laboratory itself. Its management tried to conceal this fact, but eventually, when the evidence became overwhelming, they had to admit the obvious. Only after decisive pressure did those responsible admit to the true causes of the tragedy. After that, a large-scale disinformation campaign was launched, aimed at controlling public opinion both inside the country and abroad. Surveillance was organized over mail, communications, and print media. Counterintelligence officers were involved in the operation, particularly to influence foreign sources of information. There was also another version of the events. The former head of the environmental department of the Yekaterinburg city administration, Sergei Volkov, claimed that a cassette of munitions exploded in the transport tunnel beneath the laboratory of the 19th settlement. The mortality rate among the victims was lightning fast. As eyewitnesses from the emergency departments recalled, patients could remain conscious for some time, even move around, but then suddenly develop severe shortness of breath, which quickly led to death. From the moment of hospitalization to a fatal outcome usually took no more than 3 hours, and from the onset of symptoms, no more than a day. Because of the rapid progression of events, medical records appeared extremely brief and were almost immediately confiscated by representatives of the security services after being completed. Individuals in military uniforms were present in the hospitals. They controlled the situation, spoke with the staff, and monitored every detail. Medical records written in pencil, as well as doctor's notes, were also collected and taken away. In conversations with the press, medical staff mentioned that the KGB officers who controlled the situation in the hospital had a separate room allocated specifically for their use. But at the same time, the medical staff had no opportunity to focus on searching for the source of the contamination. All their attention was absorbed by the struggle to save the lives of patients who were rapidly dying. It was decided to centralize all infected patients in City Hospital number 40, where a 500-bed hospital was urgently set up based on the infectious diseases ward. One of the ward nurses recalled how this relentless shift began. The first patients were brought in at midnight. They were brought in by ambulances, taken to a separate entrance where there was a special freight elevator. All these measures were taken to avoid panic and minimize contact with other people. The condition of the patients was extremely severe. The predominant symptoms were signs of acute respiratory failure, severe coughing, and general weakness. Most of the infected were still young, between 30 and 40 years old. The medical staff had to work in conditions of complete absence of special protective equipment. They did not have plague suits or modern masks. For protection, they used 2 gowns, a surgical cap, and for the face, they put on a homemade mask, a scarf wrapped in gauze on both sides. Treatment was carried out with numerous injections and antibiotics, but the conditions were extremely difficult. The syringes were reusable. After each use, they had to be boiled, which required extra time and effort in an already overburdened hospital. The medical staff worked around the clock in those days. Doctors and nurses did not leave the hospital grounds. They slept right there and ate in a cafeteria that was specially set up on the 5th floor. Going home was impossible. A state of emergency was declared in the city. Alongside treating patients, a large-scale vaccination campaign and disinfection of the area were launched. In the southern districts of Sverdlovsk, the top layer of soil suspected of contamination was removed. Building surfaces, roads, and even trees were treated with special solutions. The streets were literally paved over with asphalt to isolate dangerous hotspots. However, despite these measures, a new wave of infections occurred. This was caused by the fact that many workers involved in the disinfection efforts did not even have basic protective equipment, including respirators. In the process, they inhaled remnants of the pathogen, which led to new cases of illness. The mortality rate only began to decline after an effective treatment regimen was found and the entire city was thoroughly disinfected. The last fatal case was recorded on June 12, 1979. But to this day, all official documents related to these events remain classified.